I mean, amazing, amazing. So Samson, I really liked the topic when I saw it, and sincerely, I was excited that we're going to be talking about this, which is a post-COVID conversation, but the conversation is critical at this point because as Nigerians, we have a culture of procrastinating. We have a reactive culture, to global issues and even national issues. So it's good that we're not talking about just the COVID reality, but we're talking about post-COVID. And I think what you guys are doing in the foundation is very, very amazing. The topic is simple: achieving a paradigm shift in the public education system in Nigeria. Just a critical thought I'm going to share, right? And I'm just going to speak to, say, 4 things. And I think my job here today is done while we listen to the guru, the educational guru herself, shed more light on probably what I may have not touched on. Look at Nigeria as it is today. Now, are you proud of the kind of graduates we have from the university system? Are we proud of the kind of level of innovation, technology? If you look at it critically, you would ask yourself, why do we have so much people that are learned, quote and unquote, but we have a shabby system as a country? Now, it just shows you that our education, has not done too well in evolving or defining the reason for education in the first place. So if you have education that gives you knowledge and skill, and that knowledge and skill cannot be used to better the lots of humans, you and I, then I think that education is a wasted education. You may not want to blame education, as it were. I started a campaign one time on Facebook, and I tagged the campaign, "Education is useless." Education is useless. And a whole lot of people came against me. You have a master's degree. Why would you say education is useless? Why would you say a whole lot of things? And some people accused me of trying to discourage people from attaining the level of education I had attained. And to me, what I was just trying to say to them, that education as it is in Nigeria is useless. So you go through various levels of education, primary, secondary, the tertiary educational process, even up to your PhD level, and you come out with nothing to show for it in terms of practical impact, of what you think on society and people, right? So to me at that time, I felt that we could do more, So in 2017, Malala came to Nigeria. It was in July. The now vice president was the acting president then. It was in July 2017. I think 31st July, if I'm not mistaken. And she met with the acting president. Now, Malala is a global education campaigner. The Pakistani lady, who was shot and all. She's doing a great deal in the educational space. And the then acting president said something that caught our attention in the development space. He said that we have to declare a state of emergency in just talking about the public education sector. Why? We had a whole lot of girls out of school. At that time, UNICEF said we had over 10.3 million out of school children, and the people who were currently in school at that time were not getting quality education, right? They're not getting quality education. Now that was in 2017. From 2017, pardon me, it was in 2017. From 2017 to 2020, we have not seen any progress in regards of that state of emergency that was declared in July 2017 up until now. I don't know if you guys have seen anything, but for me, and from the data perspective I come from, I've not seen anything. Within 2017 and 2019, it was estimated that 13.5 million children were out of school in Nigeria. 13.5 million children were out of school in Nigeria. The Ministry of Education came out to say, no, we don't have that kind of number out of school children. We asked them, how many children are actually out of school in Nigeria? And they couldn't give us any figure. I believed them when they said that the data, 10.3 million or 13.5 million out of school children, were data from foreign bodies, right? The UNICEF, the United Nations or the World Bank. I believed them when they said that, right? But the truth of the matter is, the federal government doesn't have its own data that speaks to how many out of school children we have in the country. Neither does it have a data on how many children we actually have in Nigeria currently, right? So when you don't have data, you cannot speak to anything. Now, this is just me laying the background of the kind of messy educational system we have, particularly when it comes to the public schools. Now, I track government funds in the areas of basic health, basic education. Now, I see very gory pictures. I mean, I could have compiled a picture list and probably shared a slide, with our viewers so that they can see what I'm talking about when I talk about the fact that education in Nigeria, especially the public educational system, is totally messed up. And I think we should pack it up and begin to recreate deliberately the kind of education we want for the future, because the world has moved. The world is in its fourth revolution now. We are not in our first revolution yet. Because now, what I'm trying to say is, look at the data. Out of school children, look at the children that are in school. How many of them are actually learning? So we're talking about learning outcomes. Now, when you go to a public school, there was a state in Nigeria that owed public school teachers salaries, unpaid salaries, for over 1 year. Now, you ask yourself, what kind of teaching will those teachers that are owed for over 1 year teach to children, right? Okay. Now, the student to teachers ratio in the world globally is supposed to be at a particular number. I don't want to give it a wrong. I think Madam Juliet will probably give us that ratio. Now, but in Nigeria, I have seen a primary school where they had over 70 to 100 children in a class being taught by one teacher teaching all the subjects, right? And for me, it was really a damning picture in my head to see. And I asked myself, if this was the kind of education I got, would I be able to speak as much as I am speaking today? Now, let's leave the primary education to the secondary education. The Universal Basic Education Board was inaugurated in 2004 by the then administration of President Olusegun Obasanjo. Now, the purpose was because he had seen that state governments whose responsibility it is for basic education had not done enough. So he said, hey, can we pull a fund together and have the states contribute 50%, the federal government will contribute 50%, and have them invest in critical infrastructure when it comes to basic education. Now, UBEC started in 2004. We're in 2020. I mean, this is how many years that is it's over 16 years now, and we still are talking about the same realities of our educational system. Note, every state in Nigeria should spend at least 1.9 to 2 billion yearly on basic education, 1.9 to 2 billion naira yearly on basic education. Now, if you calculate 2 billion naira multiplied by 16 years, you would see the amount that should have been invested in basic education in the country. Ask yourself the simple question: can we look to infrastructure, teachers' development, training, retraining, teachers' welfare, learning outcomes? Can you compare that amount to what we currently have today, right? You begin to imagine the kind of messed up system we find ourselves in the country. Look at the secondary education. Now, the basic education is supposed to take 9 years compulsory education. Now, if you go back to the act that formed the UBEC, it speaks to compulsory, free, and quality education. Compulsory, free, and quality education. Ask yourself, from 2004 to 2020, do we have a compulsory educational system in the country? Do we have a free basic education system in the country? And do we have a quality basic education system in the country? Now, these questions are questions that everybody can answer.
Busayo, I could feel your passion and everything. However, how did we go wrong? Busayo, where is the missing link?
I had to scribble them down so that I don't overshoot, because I really get first place, government policies. The first place we went wrong, government policies. Now, the world over, serious governments see the need to set up policies around education, because education is like that yeast, that little leaven that leavens the whole lot. So governments all over put a priority on basic education, right? In Nigeria, basic education is described from from the first 9 years of a child's schooling. So 6 years in primary school, 3 years in junior secondary school, right? Now, we are currently in an advocacy, from Malala, the last time she was in the country. The first 12 years should be free, quality, and qualitative in terms of learning outcomes for education. So the policy went wrong with the policy. The last policy review of education in the country was probably in 2004, when the Universal Basic Education very light the duties, responsibilities, and rights of children, parents, and the school, right? The government was supposed to fund the school. The parents were supposed to ensure that their wards, go to school, and all. So that was the mix we had. What we currently have in terms of government policies is very discouraging. Now, let's not put the blame on the federal government. Let's look at the state government and the local government educational authority, right? Now, the state has what is called SUBEB, State Universal Basic Education Board. The local governments across the country, 774, are supposed to have local government education authorities. LGE is dead, almost comatose. Number two, the state governments. Now, from 2015, the states that accessed Universal Basic Education funds out of the 36 states of the country was less than 10 states as of 2015. The states that accessed. Now, I tried to lay a foundation of this. The federal government puts in 50%. The state government is supposed to put 50%. When government changed, when the current president came into power, Universal Basic Education Board changed the system of states assessing these funds. Now, the system was now that the state government was first putting 50% in an account with the CBN. The federal government will now put in its 50% based on them, of state governments for time. Then that fund is monitored. So was when the federal government puts in 50%, remove their own 50%, right? So they use the 50% of the federal government. One would wonder, if the states are supposed to be in charge of basic education, how would you not invest in education? Because education is an investment. But education in politics is a terrible investment. And I'll try to explain how. If you invest in education, you may not see the dividends of that your investment in your 4 years tenure as governor. So it's better you invest in building roads, building markets, building structures. It's easier you build structures so that when you want to contest for another 4 years, people can say, hey, he has done something we can. The benefits immediately. You get the benefits in almost 10 to 20 years after your investment. And when you begin to invest in education, you don't break that investment. It must be consistent, continuous, right? So you don't teach good for the first 1 year and teach bad for the next year. No, you're going to break that flow, of education. So policies. Then there's a need for political will in implementing policies, because a policy can be beautiful, but if not implemented, you would never get any benefit from it. So in the law, it says that basic education should be free. Now, in Abuja, I live in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Some organization went for an outreach in a school, city council, right? And we discovered that children in the community couldn't go to school because their parents couldn't pay 1,000 naira PTA fee. Now, if education is supposed to be free as a policy, basic education is supposed to be free as a policy, you would wonder why parents or children are asked to pay 1,000 naira to attend school, right? So it means education is not actually free. Take this sample around, the guys that are on this call, take the sample around public primary schools around where you stay, and you discover that there are hidden charges, and because of those hidden charges, people are not going to school. Now, look at the Boko Haram insurgencies that wiped the is from 2014 or 2013, till tomorrow, right? A whole lot of, look at the crises we have, the herdsmen, farmers clashes we have around the North Central, and the banditry in Zamfara State, for example, or the Northwest. You discover that a whole lot of children have left school. So we even have, I think we have more than 13 million of school children currently. The government has not been able to solve all these challenges. So there's a need for political will. Where we went wrong, policies, but we need political will to ensure that policies work. The second thing I would speak to is the need to change the curriculum. Now, the same thing, public school, I'm not talking about the private schools now. In the public school, if you go back to your notes, if you can find them in primary school, you may see that what they are teaching the children now may have not changed significantly. Now, what has happened is the world over, there's been a lot of changes. Education is not la crème la pour now. Education is more of practical. I mean, it's more of quantitative reasoning. It's not the normal rhetorics. Unfortunately for the public institutions or our curriculum in the country, we have not moved. We have not moved according to the future. We are still where we were a long time ago. And I dare say that teachers that has been teaching for over 10 years have not gone through any teacher training. I trained teachers in those states last year in 2018. Now, teachers walked up to me and told me, we're training them on data management. They walked up to me and told me that since when they got into the teaching service in those states, they had never gone for any training. We trained them for free. I was shocked. I was asking myself, how would you be able to teach children of this generation, things that they need to know, understanding that the world has changed, astronomically. The third thing I'll talk about is educational funding, public educational funding. Now, UNICEF puts a cap, I think it's the UNICEF that puts a cap to 20-something%, investment in education, right? Now, let me tell us something about budgeting. The fact that the government has a budget, government is going to spend 40 billion on education. Now, the budget is just a porous document that speaks points, or those line items are different, which is dependent on the funds the government has. Now, so the government would rather celebrate 30%, the government would rather celebrate 30%, of its budget for infrastructure than to celebrate 30% on education. Understanding that if you build a child will be able to build the world. You don't build infrastructures and have vagabonds. The vagabonds would and sell those infrastructures you have built. So it means that the priorities of government in terms of budgeting or financing education is not actually in the right place, right? So we need to do something on our funding. Now, I think guys on this call, if you have the time, please look for Roman Osagali. He was comparing developed countries with underdeveloped. Now, so the last thing I will talk about is the need for us to have active citizens. What has gone wrong? Citizens no longer care. I call it citizens apathy, right? It's citizens apathy. People no longer care. People are not interested. You guys should just do anything you want to do. I mean, we have the money. We're going to take our children to private schools. It's beautiful. And permit me, ma'am, I said that I would not attend the public institution again. It's not because I do not trust, it's not because I don't want the system to change, but I have become apathetic to the kind of situations, not supporting citizens apathy, But I'm saying that citizens have given up. Now you have people who take their children to substandard private schools just because they can't take their children, to the public school in the first place, right? Now, those people have given up, like they're on strike. Primary school teachers were on strike. So people missed almost a year of learning. So you don't blame parents when they just look at the situation and they give up. But hey, guys, we cannot give up. We cannot give up. 10.5 million out of school children for the country. Apart from in terms of perception, you're having criminals walking on the street. You see those kids that wipe your glass on the island when you drive past or anywhere you are across the country. that have something like this, that they wipe your glass. Those children not going to school are a disaster waiting to happen. The situation in the Northeast today was aggravated because of the lack of education of children. So it was easy for anybody to indoctrinate children. You call it the Almajiri system. It was easy for people to indoctrinate those children from the street, and those children are the ones causing us pain till tomorrow. Now, you think in your house you're comfortable because you have power, have this massive silent generator in front of your house. Just come out of your gate and look at those kids that are in that bar on your street. The day push comes to shove, those people, the poor people, will always go for the rich people. And they became poor because there was a system that didn't cater for the needs of their children when it should have done that. Now, education is supposed to be meant for everybody. It's supposed to be meant for the poor. It's supposed to be meant for the rich. The reason why we have public education systems is to be able to compete favorably with the private educational system, so that people that do not have as much as other people can have quality education, so people in the society and in the future. Now look at a whole lot of people that have become professors in the country today. Look at the political elite. Most of them went to school for free. They didn't pay for education, so much so that people cannot afford it. It's a time bomb. It's a ticking time bomb, guys. God forbid that we're not going to be able to sleep in our beautiful houses, again, because there are children who have become hooligans and hoodlums on the street waiting to devour us when push comes to shove. So we need citizens to look at the future, not now. Look at the next 20 years. 10.1 million people out of school in the next 20 years is a disaster waiting to happen. We are going to have a generation of mass illiteracy. And when there's mass illiteracy, the generation that will tell government, before government constructs the road, they will have to pay them first. Those people become notorious thugs that will terrorize us and mess us up. And hey, our children that have gone to this private institute, this country, maybe they would not come back to this country, because the moment they come back to this country, they're going to be haunted by those children that we neglected on the streets, that were cleaning our glasses, serving as house helps, that were doing the shady things they are going to be currently doing. I think with these few points of mine, I would just hold it here.